My name is Ethan. I'm 31 years old, and I spent my entire life being the dependable one, the kid who fixed every financial mess, who smiled through cruel jokes, who stayed silent while others took credit. I built my career from scratch as a software engineer in Seattle, supporting myself every step of the way, while Nathan, my older brother, drifted from one failed side gig to another, always receiving applause and sympathy from mom and dad. There was never any tension. Not until last December, when everything shattered with a single sentence, "Don't bother coming unless you're finally useful." That line, dropped in our family group chat just weeks before Christmas, hit me like a sledgehammer. My heart froze. The thin veneer cracked. I was no longer unnoticed. I was deliberately erased. When Mom called later, her voice was saccharine sweet, as always when she wanted something. "Sweetheart, hope you're coming to Christmas. Nathan found a place he loves, but he needs a co-signer for the mortgage. Not a request, a performance, a drama of guilt and obligation." I just listened, nodded, said I'd think about it. Then later that evening I logged into my bank, found the tiny leftover balance from an old loan I'd given Nathan, and transferred exactly 1 cent, with a note. "Hope this helps." I stared at the screen for minutes, small, petty yet explosive. I felt a strange calm settle in my chest. Cold but clear. I was done bleeding for people who treated me like an ATM. Within an hour, Nathan called. His voice surged with fury and confusion. "A penny. You think this is funny? I'm renting now, starting over. And you send me this." I stayed silent while he ranted. Let his anger swirl in the empty phone line. Then I spoke softly. "You told me not to come unless I was useful. So here it is." There was a sharp silence, and then his tone dropped, low and tense. "You think this ends here? You think you're better than us because you sit at your code all day? Maybe if you'd helped Dad last spring, he wouldn't have put the house in my name." My breath caught. That house, I grew up in it. It was supposed to belong to both of us. 50-50. Once we turned 30, as stated plainly in Grandpa's will. My father never told me differently until now. Something in Nathan's voice blurred into apology. "Forget it," he muttered, but I couldn't forget. That night I dug through my attic, hundreds of old documents I'd stashed away when I moved away, dusty folders, archived data, boxes labeled estate and Grandpa's papers. Inside I found the original will, letters from a lawyer, even a certified summary. It spelled the truth again and again. When Ethan or Nathan hit 30, ownership splits equally. No exceptions. I held the paper in my hands. My breath was tight, my chest burned. A few days later I met Maya, a real estate attorney friend, in her sterile office. She flicked through the documents, her brow knitting tighter with each page. If Dad transferred that property to Nathan without disclosing the will, that's not just shady, it could be fraud. Her words echoed inside me. Possibilities unfolded: fraud, deception, legal exposure. I felt a pulsing energy. This wasn't just about a house, it was betrayal, systemic and calculated. I didn't reply to Nathan or Mom or Dad. Instead, I wrote a message in the family chat. "Thanks for the invite, but I won't be coming to Christmas this year. I'm reviewing Grandpa's estate documents. We'll talk soon. Nathan, enjoy the penny, consider it your early inheritance." Silence fell. Then came the voices. Voicemail after voicemail from Mom. One choked with tears. "You're ruining the holiday." One icy, "You don't understand the full picture." And the last, barely a whisper, "If you keep digging, you'll regret it." That moment, I realized this was never just about fairness. It was about power, about who gets to write the family history. Tension carved into my gut made me realize I wasn't just walking away anymore, I was stepping into something much bigger. And somewhere beneath the surface, I knew there was more hidden truth waiting to emerge. I didn't sleep the night I sent that message. My phone buzzed into the early morning, messages and missed calls stacking like bricks in a wall I no longer had any interest in climbing, but I didn't delete them. I saved every voicemail, every emotionally loaded word, every guilt-drenched attempt to pull me back into line. Because part of me, maybe the part that had been silently watching all these years, was documenting it all, as if gathering evidence in a case I hadn't yet decided to bring. The next morning, I called in sick. Technically, I said it was a personal emergency, and I wasn't lying. The emergency was the life I thought I had. I drove across the city to my old storage unit, key in hand, heart drumming. I hadn't opened that unit in nearly 2 years. but I remembered exactly where the estate folder was: bottom shelf, metal cabinet, back corner. When I pulled it out, my hands were shaking. Inside was everything: the original will, notarized and signed, letters from the executor, copies of trust documents. I flipped through the pages slowly, deliberately, like turning the pages of a crime scene photo album. The house was to be held in trust by our father until Nathan and I turned 30. After that, joint ownership. It was in black and white, legal, binding. I snapped high-res photos of every page and sent them to Maya, who immediately called me back. "Ethan," she said, her voice low and sharp, "this is solid. If your dad transferred ownership solely to Nathan and used that for a mortgage or development loan, we're talking fraud and possibly criminal misrepresentation." She paused. "This could get messy fast. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" I answered without thinking. "It's not about the house anymore." She understood. We agreed to meet the next day. In the meantime, I started digging, not through boxes this time, but through emails, tax statements, property records. And then I found a title transfer record dated 6 months ago, naming Nathan as the sole owner of the property. There was a digital copy of the deed, signed by our father, notarized, filed quietly, no mention of a trust, no mention of me. The notary's name caught my eye: Lillian Garcia. She used to work at Dad's company, retired last year. I met her once at a summer barbecue. That document was dated just before her retirement, and just like that, a fresh wave of heat flushed my body. The deed wasn't just shady, it looked manufactured, or at the very least engineered under a veil of trust and familiarity. That night, I didn't sleep again. Nathan's message still rang in my ears. "You don't know everything, Ethan." At first, I dismissed it as a threat, but the more I thought about it, the more it sounded like a warning. I tried to shake the thought, to focus on logistics, but paranoia is a clever thing. It doesn't shout, it whispers. So I kept digging, and what I found flipped everything. Grandpa hadn't bought the house. He'd inherited it from his sister Lorraine Mitchell, a woman I only vaguely remembered as a name mentioned once in a family tree. She died in 1974 under what public records called unusual circumstances. Maya found the obituary. It was sanitized, said she loved her garden, taught Sunday school, never married, but deeper in the property records, we found a contested claim filed in 1975 by a man named Emery Grant, her fiancé. He claimed Lorraine had promised the house to him. His case was dismissed, buried under newer filings, but the story stuck with me. A man willing to fight in court to honor a verbal will, erased from the record. Maya and I pulled the full title history. That's when we found something stranger. The property included a second parcel, a garden lot willed to Lorraine separately, and in 2019, it was quietly signed over to Nathan. I froze. Why would Nathan isolate and claim a sublot tied to a woman no one ever talked about? Maya did another title scan. Turns out Nathan had used that lot as collateral for a 6-figure development loan. And that's when we found the zoning application, filed just weeks ago. Nathan wasn't just trying to live in the house, he was trying to sell the land to a private developer, a developer owned by our father. The picture snapped into focus. They'd been preparing this for years. The will, the trust, my inheritance, it was never part of their plan. They needed me to co-sign because they needed legitimacy. They wanted me to disappear. I was a loose thread and they were ready to cut me. But they didn't know I'd already unraveled the entire sweater. And now I was holding the scissors. January 4th. The sky was the color of regret, cold, flat, unmoving, but I felt more awake than I had in years. That morning, Maya and I filed a fraud claim with the county clerk's office. We submitted a full legal packet, copies of the will, the trust, the questionable quick claim deed, the zoning application, and a sworn affidavit from Maya herself detailing the inconsistencies. Every page felt like a brick in a wall I was finally building around myself, against them. The claim triggered an automatic freeze on any active legal changes to the estate, which meant Nathan's zoning plans were paused, and his bank was now under obligation to review the mortgage secured using that property, and that was just the opening salvo. Within 2 days, Nathan got a cease and desist from the county zoning board. Dad's development company received an injunction frozen mid-deal. And the best part? They had no idea where the heat was coming from. I didn't sign my name to the complaint. Maya did. I stayed silent, ghost-like, untouchable. Nathan broke first. He emailed me a short message. "You really went full lawyer on us. Huh? Good luck proving anything. Arrogant, dismissive." But I could see the cracks. The punctuation too perfect. No emojis, no casual tone. It was Nathan's version of a scream into a pillow. I didn't reply. But the fallout began fast. My cousin Jessica, one of the few family members who never picked sides, texted me. Christmas was a disaster. Mom cried. Dad stormed out. Nathan left early. No one said your name, but everyone felt it. Good. I didn't want to be remembered as the disappointment. I wanted to be remembered as the reckoning. By March, the county probate court reviewed our evidence and issued a formal judgment. The property transfer was invalid. The trust had been violated, and the quitclaim deed was nullified. Ownership reverted back to what Grandpa's will had originally stated: joint ownership between me and Nathan, 50-50. But I wasn't done. I drafted a clean proposal through Maya. I'd buy Nathan's half at market value, no discounts, no threats, just a clean transaction. If he agreed, the matter would end there. If not, I'd file criminal charges: fraud, misrepresentation, and possible forgery, especially surrounding the notary. Oh, and the development loan, already under review for being secured with contested property. Nathan agreed within hours, not even a counteroffer. The truth: he was drowning. The zoning freeze had stalled his funding. The fraud review spooked his investors. He needed cash. Fast. I wired the money. Maya oversaw the legal exchange, and just like that, I became the sole owner of the house I was supposed to share. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted closure. But that wasn't the end. It was never just about the house. The deeper betrayal still haunted me: the buried garden lot, the stolen name of Lorraine Mitchell, the fiancé who vanished, the silence that followed. I needed answers. Closure wasn't enough. So I started digging again, not into deeds this time, but into history. That's when I discovered the 1973 police report. It was minor noise complaint, no charges, but the caller was Emery Grant, and the address the same as my family home. It wasn't just a house. It was a graveyard of secrets. I spent days combing through local archives, scanned microfilms, even joined old neighborhood Facebook groups under a pseudonym. Eventually, I found an article from 1975 buried in an online archive of a defunct local paper: "Man claims woman's death linked to family dispute." It was vague, but it connected Lorraine's death to internal family disagreements and real estate pressure. No foul play confirmed, no autopsy shared, but the implications were there just beneath the surface. I printed it, highlighted it, filed it into my growing dossier. The following day, I visited the property for the first time since the judgment. I stood in the backyard, near the old garden plot. The soil was hard, cracked, untouched in years, but I remembered it. I remembered my grandfather sitting there, pulling weeds in silence. I remembered the locked shed with no key, the rusted tools, the silence. Lorraine hadn't just disappeared. She'd been erased. And now I was holding the last fragments of her memory. So I made a decision. I called a historical preservation society, told them about Lorraine, the original ownership, the zoning battle. I gave them access to the property files, the probate ruling, the archived articles. I even offered to fund a small memorial garden on the lot in Lorraine's name, not because I wanted attention, but because someone had to remember her. They accepted. And that's when I got the final voicemail from Nathan. No threats, no anger, just a quiet voice, broken and tired. "You won," he said. "You always had the truth on your side. I just didn't think you'd ever use it." And maybe that's the saddest part. Not that he betrayed me, but that he thought I never would fight back. For weeks after Nathan's voicemail, I didn't speak to anyone in my family, not out of spite, but because I needed space to breathe, to recalibrate who I was now that I'd finally stepped out of their shadow. The silence was strange at first. No more phone calls from my mother laced with guilt. No more veiled demands disguised as invitations. Just quiet, stillness. I moved into the house that spring. It was a strange homecoming. The walls still remembered voices that hadn't echoed in years. I stripped down the attic and converted it into an office. In the garden, I planted lavender and rosemary. the way Lorraine supposedly had decades ago. I even had a local stonemason carve a modest plaque in memory of Lorraine Mitchell, a life remembered. Some neighbors passed by. Curious, a few old-timers nodded quietly, as if they knew something I didn't. One day, a woman named Mrs. Wilkins knocked on my door. She was in her 80s, walked with a cane, and wore a cardigan that hung off her frame like a memory of youth. "You're Lorraine's nephew, aren't you?" she asked. I paused, then nodded. "Great-nephew, technically." She smiled gently. She was a sweet girl, used to bring my late husband tomatoes from her garden every summer. Then one day, she was gone. They said it was an accident, but her voice trailed off. That house was never the same after she died. I asked her what she meant. She didn't answer, just patted my hand and walked away. That night, I sat in the garden, staring at Lorraine's plaque. I didn't know who she really was, what she believed in, or how she truly died. But I knew one thing: someone tried to erase her. And now, after all these years, she had a name again. But just as the ground beneath me began to feel steady, the next twist hit me like a punch to the ribs. It started with a letter, a simple envelope, no return address, just my name and home address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed, "You think the garden is all there is? Ask your father about Lorraine's journals, if he hasn't burned them yet." My mouth went dry. The handwriting was mechanical, clinical, emotionless, but the content, it was personal, specific. Someone knew. Someone wanted me to keep digging. I called Maya, told her about the letter. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You sure you want to keep going? You've already won." Kevin. But I hadn't, not really. Winning back a house wasn't the same as reclaiming a history. I called my father. He didn't answer. So I drove to his office. Well, his former office. The company had been gutted since the investigation. He wasn't listed on the board anymore, but the receptionist still recognized me, said he sometimes came in late, after hours, to clear out old files. That night, I waited. And sure enough, at 9:42 p.m., he pulled into the lot, same beige sedan, same stooped posture. I stepped out of my car before he could disappear inside. "Dad," I said quietly. He froze. "I need to ask you something. About Lorraine. About her journals." His eyes twitched, but he didn't look surprised. More, tired, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "I don't have them anymore," he said. "But you did," I asked. He didn't answer. Did Nathan read them? Is that why he wanted the property so badly? His shoulders sagged. Lorraine, she was different. She wrote things down, things that could have caused trouble. What kind of trouble? Again, silence. I stared at him, feeling the years between us stretch taut. "You always protected Nathan, even when it cost me everything." Was it because of the journals, what she wrote? His eyes finally met mine, and in them, I saw something I hadn't seen in decades: fear. She was going to give the house to someone else. He whispered, "Not your grandfather. To Emery. She changed the will. That's what the journal said. That's why your grandfather pushed it through fast, buried the papers, transferred the deed before anyone could challenge it." My stomach turned. So it wasn't just shady paperwork, it was theft. He nodded. Inheritance theft, before the term existed. "And you knew," I said quietly. "I was 16, he replied. "What could I do?" "You could have told the truth." He didn't respond. I turned and walked away, the truth dragging behind me like a shadow. Back home, I sat at my desk and stared at Lorraine's plaque through the attic window. A woman erased, a man who vanished, and a family that inherited lies as casually as furniture. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in the attic, eyes fixed on Lorraine's plaque, fingers tracing the edge of an old photograph I'd found earlier that day. It was black and white, curled at the corners, showing a woman with soft eyes and a half smile standing in front of a wild, blooming garden. On the back, scrawled in faint pencil, Lorraine, Spring '73. She didn't look like someone who faded quietly from memory. She looked alive, defiant. The next morning, I made a decision. It wasn't enough to own the house. It wasn't even enough to expose the fraud. If this was really about justice, then Lorraine's story deserved to be known, remembered. I called Maya. "I want to go public," I said, "with everything." She hesitated. You mean press charges or... I mean press, media? I want to tell the whole story, not just about my brother in the house, but Lorraine, the will, the theft, everything they tried to bury. She exhaled slowly. That's a huge step. Kevin, you'll be digging up your own family's grave. They've already dug it. I said, I'm just choosing not to stand in it anymore. And so it began. Within a week, we'd gathered everything: emails, the fake deed, the notary evidence, the zoning application, the quick claim transfer, even old newspaper clippings about Lorraine and Emery. Maya helped me craft a statement. I reached out to a local investigative podcast that specialized in buried legal disputes and historical scandals. The host, a woman named Dana Kruger, jumped at the story. It's inheritance fraud meets generational trauma, she said. We'll give it a 5-part series. Perfect. By the end of the month, the first episode aired. It opened with my voice nervous but steady, recounting the Christmas text from Nathan. Then it unfolded like a thriller, layer by layer, from family favoritism to legal deceit, culminating in the hidden history of Lorraine Mitchell and the property she was supposed to pass on. The response was overwhelming. Emails poured in, messages from strangers, distant relatives, even former neighbors of Lorraine who still remembered her Sunday school lessons or the way she always carried garden gloves in her purse. One message stopped me cold. It was from a woman named Clarisse Grant, Emery's niece. She wrote, I always suspected something happened. My uncle never got over her. Thank you for giving her voice back. But the real storm hadn't started yet. 3 days after episode 3 aired, the one detailing the forged deed and the fake notary, I got a call from a county prosecutor. They'd opened a formal investigation into my father and Nathan for potential real estate fraud and notarial misconduct. Lillian Garcia, the retired notary, had confirmed in a signed affidavit that she never authorized the deed, that her name had been used without consent. That was the nail in the coffin. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just felt calm, like the world was finally rebalancing itself. Nathan tried to reach out once more. Another voicemail. I hope this was worth it. You'll always be alone. Kevin, you'll die in that house. I didn't respond, but I did save the message just in case. The prosecutors moved swiftly. My father was charged with falsifying legal documents and obstruction. Nathan faced charges of fraud and attempted unlawful enrichment. They didn't arrest them at gunpoint or anything dramatic. It was quiet, but thorough. By summer, both had accepted plea deals. No jail time, just massive fines, probation, and a legal stipulation that neither could hold property titles or development licenses for 5 years. It was more than I expected, but less than they deserved. I bought Nathan's half of the house officially. No drama, just numbers and signatures. He needed the money. His credit had tanked. His business had collapsed. Our mother moved in with him shortly after. We haven't spoken since. I finished restoring the garden in late July, planted heirloom tomatoes, sunflowers, and a white rose bush, Lorraine's favorite, according to one of her old Sunday school students who reached out after the podcast aired. Every Saturday, I sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun trace the garden's edge. Sometimes neighbors wave. Sometimes they stop to talk. And sometimes I just listen to the wind, the leaves, the silence. People think revenge is loud, explosive. But sometimes it's quiet, a seed buried deep, a name remembered, a story told after decades of silence. That's what this was. Not revenge, restoration. And maybe that's what justice really is: planting back what was stolen, watching it grow, and refusing to let anyone bury it again. Story 2. I'm Marjorie Ellis, 58, and until last winter, I was sure loyalty ran in our family's blood. I had taught high school literature for 3 decades, paid off a modest craftsman in Boise, and nursed my husband, Daniel, through his final months of heart failure when he slipped away. The house felt like an empty museum, every hallway echoing with his jokes. My daughter, Jillian, 31, begged me to move into her place in Fort Collins. You shouldn't be alone. Mom, Carter and I have the space, she said. The offer sounded like a lifeline, so I sold the house, packed memories into 2 trunks, and headed south. The first week inside their sunlit bungalow felt hopeful. I baked sourdough, fixed a leaky faucet, and listened when Carter ranted about his new tech startup. Yet tiny cracks appeared. Carter's smile never reached his eyes. If I sat on the couch past 10, he sighed just loud enough for me to hear. Jillian noticed but brushed it away. He's under pressure. Don't mind him. One Friday evening I poured 3 glasses of Merlot. Carter raised his only to glance at Jillian. She can't keep living here, he said. As if I were invisible. Jillian's cheeks flamed. Not tonight. Carter. He kept going. Words like stones. We budgeted for 2 adults. Not 3. Utilities are ridiculous. And she's not exactly bringing in income. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I reminded him that I'd paid for groceries, bought new patio furniture, even slipped $200 toward their mortgage. None of that mattered. Carter slid a typed notice complete with checkout date across the table. Jillian whispered, "Just until things settle." "Mom." I stared at the paper, then at the girl I once rocked to sleep. "Things will never settle if you set fires," I said, voice even. I packed that night, 2 suitcases, 1 cardboard box. Carter didn't step out of his office. Jillian watched from the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, tears she refused to let fall. The porch light flicked off behind me. The Steer-In Motor Lodge sat beside I-25 neon vacancy, buzzing like a dying wasp. My room smelled of bleach and damp carpet. I lined my shoes in army straight rows because order calms panic. The next morning I started job hunting: grocery cashier, receptionist, anything. Every application ended with the same polite smile. "We'll keep your resume on file." Translation: we don't hire grandmothers. Evenings dragged. I reread worn paperbacks, underlining lines I once taught teenagers. Dickinson's. I felt a funeral in my brain hit different at 2 a.m. when semis rattled the windows. On the 10th night, I opened the only keepsake box I'd rescued from my attic. Inside lay birthday photos, Daniel's war medals, and a palm-sized leather journal I'd never seen. The initials L.E. were pressed into the cover, my late mother Lydia Ellis. Curious, I flipped to the first entry. 4 May 1976. He said the adoption must stay sealed. Promised to trust when the girl is grown. I signed. What choice did I have? Adoption trust. My lungs froze. Page after page revealed coded references to the benefactor. Always signed R.J. The last entry included a name and address. Contact Mr. Russell Jensen of First Colorado Trust if emergency arises. Beneath it, taped, was an unmarked safety deposit box key. My hands shook so hard the diary nearly slipped. I hadn't known my father. Mom claimed he died before I was born. What if that was only half the story? What if the girl was me? Sleep was impossible. At dawn I drove downtown, palms sweating on the steering wheel. Inside First Colorado Trust, I asked for Mr. Jensen. An elderly man with silver glasses emerged, shock plain on his face. "Mrs. Ellis." "Yes, and your mother told me you might come, 40 years ago." He led me to a private room and clicked the box onto the table. Inside lay a single envelope addressed, "To my daughter. Should fate ever fail her." Behind it, a neat folder of documents. I opened the letter first. "Marjorie, if you're reading this, Lydia is gone and I never found the courage to reveal myself. My name is Richard Jameson, founder of Mountain Ridge Resorts. I met Lydia the summer we built the first lodge. Our love was brief, our duty complicated. I provided this trust to safeguard your future. Use it when you must stand alone. R.J." The folder held bank statements, stock certificates worth more commas than I'd ever seen, and a directive naming me sole heir once I reached major life hardship. Hardship, the motel's mildew, Carter's ridicule, Jillian's silence qualify. I'd say, Mr. Jensen explained the trust could transfer within 48 hours. I nodded, throat tight. Wealth was never my dream, independence was. And now I had it, signed and notarized. Back at the motel, I opened my laptop with new purpose. I devoured tutorials on portfolio management, spoke with accountants Mr. Jensen recommended, and built a quiet LLC Summit Haven Holdings my legal shield. By midnight, I owned municipal bonds, a conservative ETF, and enough cash to last 3 lifetimes. But money wasn't the point. Dignity was. Carter had labeled me excess baggage. Jillian had let him. They needed reminding that a woman's worth doesn't expire at 50, 60, or ever. Scrolling real estate listings, I froze on an address 214 Juniper Lane, their bungalow. An auction notice blinked red. Carter's startup hadn't taken off. They'd missed 3 mortgage payments. The bank's sale date was 2 weeks away. My first instinct was pity. The second was clarity. They'd thrown me out in the rain. I would not let another storm drown me. I clicked register to bid, entered my LLC's name, and set a limit just above market value. A single keystroke later, the plan was in motion. I closed the laptop, switched off the flickering bedside lamp, and lay back. For the first time since Daniel's funeral, I felt my lungs fill fully. Tomorrow would be different, and I would design it myself. 2 Thursdays later, I sat in a courthouse basement that smelled of copier toner and burnt coffee. A dozen bidders hunched over folding chairs while a clerk read addresses in a monotone. When she reached 214 Juniper Lane, only 2 paddles lifted mine and a flustered man in a wrinkled suit who kept wiping sweat from his brow. 3 quick raises and it was over. Sold to Summit Haven Holdings. Gavel dropped. Deed printed. Keys tossed onto a metal desk. A house once filled with my Sunday cinnamon rolls now belonged to me again, this time as an asset, not a refuge. I hired Capstone Management the same afternoon. Their agent, Vanessa, had a voice soft as suede and a spine of steel. Together we drafted notices. Yet, new ownership effective immediately. Interior inspections scheduled. Rent adjusted to neighborhood market rates, an increase of 180%. Vanessa mailed the packets by certified post. My name never appeared, only the LLC's letterhead. I reminded myself this was business, not revenge. Still, when I imagined Carter's face opening that envelope, a spark lit behind my ribs. 5 days later, my phone buzzed. Vanessa. Brace yourself, she laughed. Your tenant used language I can't repeat. Carter. Who else? He threatened lawsuits, claimed the increase is elder abuse. When I reminded him the owner is a corporation, he hung up. That night I brewed chamomile in the motel microwave and stared at the steam. I wasn't gloating, I was measuring. Carter had pushed me onto a ledge. Now he was learning how wind feels up there. Sunday morning the screen flashed Jill. My thumb hovered. I answered. Her voice was brittle. Mom, something's wrong with the mortgage company. They say the house changed hands. Rent is triple. I'm sorry you're shocked, I said, keeping my tone even. Have you read the lease details? A pause, then a whisper. Carter said we should ignore it. I don't think that's wise. Finally learning not to follow every word he says. The bite slipped out before I could stop it. Silence grew thick. She exhaled. Could I meet you coffee? Tomorrow, I agreed. Knowing Carter wouldn't come, his pride wouldn't fit through the cafe door. We sat by the window at Maple and Steam. Jillian's eyeliner was smudged. A tremor ran through her spoon as she stirred foam. He's furious, she said, but I'm relieved. Does that make sense? Since you left? The house has felt like walking on cracked ice. Her eyes lifted to mine. Damp. I was too scared to defend you. And now this. I wanted to hug her, yet the memory of that eviction notice still stung. Fear turns people into echoes of someone else. I said, you can change the tune. She gripped her cup. We can't afford the new rent. Carter's startup bled our savings. Foreclosure would tank my credit. The lease allows 60 days before eviction. That buys time. I replied, what do you want that time to look like? A single tear slipped down her cheek. I want out of the house. The debt, the marriage, maybe all of it. My breath caught. Half sorrow, half solidarity, then start packing. I'll have the management company waive penalties if you vacate before the deadline. I didn't add because I own the place, not yet. She blinked. You'd do that when women find the exit door. Other women should hold it open. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. For the first time in months, warmth passed between us without burning. 3 evenings later, Vanessa forwarded a voice recording. Capstone logs every tenant call. Carter's rant blasted through my earbuds. You can't bully me out. I'll expose your slum tactics to the news. My wife and I have connections. I almost laughed. Connections don't pay rent. Vanessa's report said he'd ripped down the inspection notice and threatened staff at the walkthrough. That breach alone gave grounds for immediate termination of tenancy. I signed the order electronically, heart steady, finger decisive. Jillian moved into a sublet across town within a week, helped by her best friend Kira and a guy from Kira's book club who owned a pickup. She texted photos of stacked cartons labeled Keep, Donate, Start Over. Under Start Over, she'd written courage, self-respect, mom's recipes. Meanwhile, I visited a realtor about a modest brick duplex near campus. First floor unit for me, second for rental income. The trust ensured I could pay cash, but I negotiated anyway. Practice felt good. Nights grew brighter. I replaced motel neon with table lamps in my new living room, unpacked Daniel's medals onto a shelf, placed Lydia's diary in a glass box. Legacies displayed, not hidden. Capstone scheduled a final inspection of Juniper Lane. State law required the landlord, corporate or otherwise, be present. I hadn't planned to reveal myself yet, but fate likes drama. Carter opened the door. His expression shifted from anger to confusion when he saw Vanessa's client was me. "You," he choked. "Me," I said, "Summit Haven's sole proprietor." Color drained from his face. Jillian, there to collect the last of her clothes, pressed a hand to her mouth. Vanessa cleared her throat and recited the vacancy checklist. Carter barely heard. His gaze drilled into mine, searching for shame he would not find. When paperwork ended, I spoke quietly. "The property will be renovated, then offered to families who value a safe, respectful home. Goodbye, Carter." He opened his mouth, maybe to plead, maybe to curse, but words failed. I turned, feeling the weight of his silence lift from my shoulders like a coat I'd never chosen to wear. Outside, Jillian hurried after me. "You bought the house." "Yes." "Why tell me now?" "Because secrets bruise people. Transparency heals, and you're ready to heal." Tears pooled again, but her spine looked straighter than it had in years. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she whispered. "I almost did," I confessed, voice soft, but roots run deeper than the storms that shake them. She nodded, wiped her cheeks. "I'm finding my own soil now. That's all a mother can hope for." That evening, I moved the last of my suitcases into the brick duplex. The hushed tick of the hall clock felt like applause. I brewed Earl Grey, stood at the window, and watched dusk fold over rooftops. Justice had never tasted this gentle. No confetti, no spotlight, just the quiet certainty that I had rewritten the narrative carved for older women, from burden to builder, from discarded to decisive. Yet one chapter remained unfinished: what to do with the trust's larger power. Money can shelter one person or salvage many. I opened my laptop and typed Boise Literacy Initiative Grant Proposal Draft. Daniel's memory deserved a living monument, and kids in my old school district needed books more than I needed another investment. The cursor blinked, eager. My story, once hijacked, was firmly back in my hands. Tomorrow I would begin sharing the pen. Spring leaned into summer, and with it came Colorado's stubborn sun, bright, relentless, the kind that refuses to let shadows linger. I matched its energy. Every dawn I jogged the quiet streets near my duplex, letting crisp air scissor through old doubts. By breakfast, I was already on calls with the Boise Literacy Initiative, shaping the grant that would turn abandoned strip mall space into a community library. I could almost hear Daniel chuckling. "Retirement? Huh, not in your DNA." He would have approved. Juniper Lane's rehab started in May. Capstone's crew ripped out the stained carpeting Carter once forbade Jillian to replace and pried warped cabinets off kitchen walls. I visited twice a week, clipboard in hand, flats dusty by noon. Watching decay peel away felt like surgery on a memory, painful but necessary. During one walk through, the electrician, Gabe Moreno, asked if I'd reviewed the eco-rebate paperwork. His gentle baritone reminded me to inhale before I talked, something I hadn't done around men since Daniel died. We compared notes on solar incentives, then swapped favorite pastry shops by the tool van. It wasn't flirting. I told myself it was carbohydrates research. Peace rarely remains unchallenged. In June, a thick envelope arrived. Ellis versus Summit Haven Holdings. Carter had filed a wrongful eviction suit, claiming emotional distress and malicious rent gouging. Vanessa assured me the case was flimsy. He'd violated lease terms, left damages, owed back utilities. Still, the idea of a courtroom tugged at old anxiety threads. I forwarded the summons to Mr. Jensen, then made tea and played Bach until the jitters eased. Power means choosing response over reaction. I chose facts, not fear. Meanwhile, Jillian blossomed in her sublet. She enrolled in a project management certificate program, sold her wedding china online, and resumed her college hobby, silversmithing. One Saturday, she surprised me with a delicate bracelet stamped with the word rooted. "Thought you deserved something forged rather than bought," she said, fastening it around my wrist. The metal felt cool, steady like the bond rebuilding between us. We also adopted a routine Thursday dinners in my tiny dining nook. She tested new recipes on me while we dissected everything from climate policy to reality show absurdities. Carter never came up unless she raised him, and even then only as a reference point in her growth chart. Late July. Courthouse again, different room, same fluorescent hum. Carter represented himself, tie askew, folders spilling. His opening statement accused predatory corporations crushing honest homeowners, when my attorney calmly listed lease violations, late notices, and his hostile voicemails. The judge's eyebrows climbed so high they nearly met her bangs. Jillian attended, sitting on the opposite side from her ex, when Carter spotted her. He faltered. Panic flashed across his features, perhaps realizing he was truly alone in his crusade. 20 minutes later, the judge dismissed the case with prejudice. Carter owed legal fees and 3 months' rent. As we exited, I heard Jillian exhale as if she'd been underwater. Outside, summer sunlight coated everything in forgiveness, whether people deserved it or not. August opened with 2 milestones. The Juniper Project finished sage green siding, pollinator garden, solar roof. I partnered with a local housing nonprofit to lease the duplex at affordable rates to single-parent families. During the open house ribbon cutting, Gabe installed smart thermostats while explaining the app to residents. He left a paper bag on my porch, later 6 cardamom cronuts. Research continues. Read the note. My laugh startled a sparrow off the railing. The Idaho School District accepted my literacy grant. I was invited to keynote the grand opening come October. I hadn't set foot in Boise since the funeral. The idea felt equal parts thrilling and raw. One warm evening, Jillian joined me on the duplex's front step, cicadas throbbing in the cottonwoods. "Mom," she said, gaze fixed on the sunset bleeding past rooftops, "do you ever worry you change too much too late?" I thought of Lydia signing adoption papers in secret rooms, of myself signing trust documents in a bank vault decades later. "Change can't read clocks," I said. "It shows up the moment courage does." She nodded slowly. "I've been offered a position at a studio in Portland. I'd move in October." Fear flickered across her face. "Would that feel like leaving you again?" My chest tightened, not from loss, but pride. Birds don't apologize for migration. I told her, "Go shape metal and fog and whatever else calls you." We hugged long enough for mosquitoes to find ankles, but we didn't care. Carter's defeat didn't end his bitterness. He posted rants online about scheming mothers-in-law. Strangers tagged me, expecting retaliation. I typed no replies, poured energy into tangible good instead, a Saturday creative writing club in my duplex's basement, stocked from library book donations. 10 kids showed up the first week. By the third, folding chairs lined the hall. One girl, Tessa, wrote a poem titled "Shelves That Don't Judge." It ended. Words hold us even when people drop us. I nearly cried behind the snack table. Mid-September, Gabe invited me to the local jazz fest. I stared at the text for a full minute. Dating hadn't crossed my mind. Daniel had been my only dance partner for 34 years. Still, something in Gabe's easy kindness felt safe. We spent that Sunday under string lights, saxophones weaving night air. He never pushed, never presumed. When "Fly Me to the Moon" began, he offered his hand. I hesitated, then stepped forward. Our sway was awkward at first, but by the chorus my feet remembered trust comes from practice. I left with cheeks aching from smiling. As he walked me to my car, he said, "Marjorie, you build things that last. I'd like the chance to." Too slowly, hope fluttered where grief used to nest. I nodded. Jillian's Portland move loomed. We spent her last weekend boxing tools and labeling shipping crates. She sealed the final carton, then turned to me. "I used to think strength meant never needing anyone. Then I saw you turn hurt into homes and libraries." Tears shimmered. "I want to be that kind of strong." "You already are," I said, sliding the rooted bracelet from my wrist onto hers. "Take the reminder." She sniffed, laughter mixing with tears. "You'll visit, right? And maybe bring that charming electrician." "No promises about Gabe," I teased, "but I'll bring cronuts." We laughed until packing tape lost its stick. The night before Jillian's flight, I reread Lydia's diary. One line glowed, "Plant what endures, prune what wounds." I closed the cover, heart steady. Tomorrow, Jillian would fly west. Next month, I'd speak in Boise, standing where my own stories began in secrecy. After that, who knows? I curled on the porch swing, phone in hand, typing a message to Gabe about spare concert tickets, then stopped. Some melodies need silence first. I pocketed the phone, leaned back, and let the night drift across my skin, cool and infinite. Morning would bring movement. Tonight was for stillness and gratitude, the richest inheritance of all. 3 days later, I aimed my Subaru north. Dog-eared speech notes on the passenger seat. Boise greeted me with crisp air that tasted of pears and distant wood smoke. The new Riverside Reading Center had once been a bankrupt mattress outlet. Now murals of soaring cranes wrapped the brick, and inside, shelves gleamed under skylights. During the ribbon cutting, I spoke without glancing at my paper. A book is a door you can carry. Today we hand children thousands of doors. Applause rolled through the atrium. In the front row, I spotted my former student Nate Alvarez, now an English teacher himself, wiping a cheek. My knees wobbled. Good tears use the same muscles as fear. Afterward, he pressed a battered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird into my hands. Inside the cover, he'd scrawled, "You taught me courage is quieter than crowds. Thank you for proving it again." I hugged him so tight he squeaked. While volunteers served cupcakes, a gray-haired woman approached, eyes clouded with hesitation. "You're Lydia's girl." My lungs stalled. "You knew my mother. I rented her the attic flat after you were born," she said, voice trembling. A kind soul, but always frightened of someone finding out. She'd be proud today. She squeezed my fingers and melted back into the crowd. Leaving the scent of lilac perfume and unresolved mystery, I realized some questions can rest unanswered. Their gift is curiosity, not closure. That evening, hotel lamp glowing, I checked voicemail. One new message, Carter's number. My thumb hovered. I pressed play. "Marjorie, I'm leaving town. I sold the rant blog, settled the fees. Wanted you to know I'm starting over somewhere no one knows my name. I wish I'd seen your worth sooner. Take care of Jill." No request, no bitterness, just the sound of a man stepping off a stage that no longer held an audience. I deleted the recording but kept the lesson. Even the loudest critics learn silence when truth echoes long enough. Back in Fort Collins, Gabe met me at the duplex, sleeves rolled, paint flecks in his beard. "Upgraded the kids' reading nook while you were gone," he said, leading me downstairs. Fairy lights now twinkled over beanbags. A wooden sign read, "Story Seeds." He handed me a mug of mulled cider. How did Boise feel like opening a window in a locked attic? I answered. We sat on the floor, backs against bookshelves. After a stretch of companionable hush, he asked, "Do you believe in late beginnings?" I watched the cider steam dance. "I believe dawn keeps showing up, no matter how many sunsets we've seen." His smile deepened lines at his eyes. "May I take you to dinner that lasts past sunset then?" "Yes," I said, pulse steady. "As long as we order dessert first, age deserves urgency." November snow dusted the Rockies when Jillian video called from her Portland studio. Metal shavings glittered in her hair like tiny stars. She showed me her latest piece, an open cuff engraved, "Shelves that don't judge." Proceeds would fund her own art scholarships. "You look happy." I told her. "I feel unboxed." She answered, "Gabe treating you right? He listens more than he talks. That's rare gold. Hold it gently." We blew kisses at screens, laughter filling the pixel gap. On the anniversary of the night, Carter served me eviction papers. I hosted a block potluck. Former Juniper Lane tenants arrived with casseroles. New residents with shy smiles. Gabe's jazz trio set up in the driveway, horns warm against the chilly air. Mid-evening, I slipped away to the porch swing, my life's map unrolled in my mind. Savannah childhood, Boise classroom, motel neon, bank vault, court bench, and finally this string light glow. I heard steps. Vanessa appeared, handing me a foil-wrapped brownie. "Landlord of the year," she teased. "Thought you should taste your reputation." "Couldn't have done it without a fierce property manager," I replied, bumping her shoulder. She leaned on the railing. "What's next for Summit Haven Holdings? Maybe a second duplex? Maybe a micro-grant for women escaping financial abuse?" I bit the brownie. Maybe just breathing. When guests departed and instruments were packed, Gabe walked me to the kitchen where leftover pies crowded every surface. He sampled apple crumble, nodded approval, then grew suddenly solemn. "Marjorie, loving you would be an honor I don't intend to rush, but I needed to state it plain." He set the fork down, met my gaze. "I love the way you rebuild." Warmth surged from collarbone to fingertips. I rested my palm over his paint-speckled hand. "I'm still under construction," I whispered. "Then I'll wear a hard hat," he said, grin returning. I rose before dawn, wrapped in Daniel's old flannel robe, and stepped onto the porch. Snow had stopped, the sky blushed lavender. I opened Lydia's diary to the last blank page and wrote, "Inheritance equals responsibility. Today I choose to spend both." Closing the cover, I breathed in cold air rich with cedar and distant coffee roasts. The porch swing creaked as I sat, but this time it felt like the earth giving me a gentle push forward. Some stories end with a door slamming. Mine ends with doors propped open, hinges oiled for whoever needs passage. Behind me, Gabe flicked on the kitchen light, silhouette busy at the kettle. I smiled into the sunrise, ready for the next chapter, unworried by the plot twists ahead, grateful to be the author at last. Story 3. My name is Cassandra Blake. I'm 30, and until last month I equated family with vintage wine, aged, complex, worth the wait. Turns out even expensive bottles can be full of vinegar. I met Adrian Moore in Napa when I was 25. He sauntered into the tasting room wearing dusty boots and a grin that tasted like summer. I was a junior brand designer pitching bottle labels to his family's winery. He was the prodigal son freshly returned from business school. He called my mock-ups liquid poetry, and I fell for the flattery as much as for his impossible blue eyes. 5 months later, he slipped a Cabernet red ring on my finger beneath the oaks. I said yes, blinded by fairy-light promises. Within a year, I'd traded my San Francisco studio for a hillside estate and the new surname Moore Blake hyphenated by me, grudgingly accepted by him. Adrian's parents, Philip and Marianne, came with the package genteel smiles, starched napkins, a cellar older than some countries, their younger daughter. Lily, 22, lived in a renovated carriage house on the grounds. Lily had been mute since a childhood fever. The doctors blamed neurological damage. She walked with a tremor, communicated by tapping a tiny bell when she needed water or warmth, and spent afternoons sketching vines and charcoal smudges. The family treated her like a fragile relic, beloved but breakable. So did I. Life in the vineyard glistened at first. Sunrise jogs through misty rows, dinner parties where I played gracious hostess while Adrian quoted growth forecasts, yet hairline cracks appeared before the harvest was done. Adrian mocked my city girl ideas when I suggested eco-friendly packaging. If I lingered in the design studio past dark, he'd text, "Remember, married women cook, not code." I laughed it off, swirling Merlot to hide the sting. When he asked me to leave my freelance clients focus on the acreage, "Cass, the winery needs your creative eye full-time," I finally relented, convinced compromise was love. My laptop closed, the vineyard gates closed with it. One rainy April morning, Marianne glided into the conservatory with news that felt like a gift wrapped in razor wire. "Philip and I are joining a 4-week Mediterranean cruise," she announced, smoothing pearl sleeves. "Adrian insists we go, says the stress of the harvest is aging us." I congratulated her, half jealous, until she added, "We need someone we trust to watch Lily. You, darling, have the perfect temperament." Translation: You're convenient and already on the payroll. Adrian seconded the plan before I could protest. "Come on, babe. You keep saying you two have a connection. Consider it girl time." He sealed the discussion with a kiss that tasted like oak and dismissal. The Moors sailed off 3 mornings later, leaving me with a handwritten list of Lily's routines, 2 emergency numbers, and an unsettling quiet lodged between the vines. The first week alone with Lily flowed smoothly. She rang her bell, I supplied tea, blankets, cassette tapes of 70s folk music she seemed to love. Evenings I read aloud on the cottage porch while she drew constellations that only she could see. Yet shadows lurked. Adrian's calls from business meetings came at odd hours, always from unknown numbers. I caught fragments, clinking glasses, feminine laughter, languages he didn't speak. My questions met with weary sighs. "Cass, don't start. The distributor dinners are brutal." Still, The house felt lighter without his spurs on the hardwood. I almost enjoyed the lull until the night I found the cellar door ajar at 3 a.m., a cold draft curling up the stairs. Nothing missing, but a lipstick-smudged glass perched on a barrel told a different story. 2 days later, Lily skipped lunch. No bell, no charcoal under her nails. Anxiety nudged me across the courtyard. I knocked, got silence, pushed inside. The cottage smelled of citrus and graphite. Sketches littered the floor, pages thick with dark strokes. At their center lay a drawing so vivid it stole my breath, a woman standing alone beside a shattered wine press, crimson pooling at her feet. The woman's face was mine. "Lily," I whispered. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun and stared. Lily was standing unaided, shoulders squared, eyes sharp as broken glass, no tremor, no hesitation. She held up the bell between two steady fingers, then set it gently on the desk. "Cassandra," she said, voice quiet but certain, each syllable clear as spring water. "We need to talk before he comes back." My knees buckled onto the chaise. Words refused to form. She continued, tone calm, almost rehearsed. "I don't have nerve damage. I never did." The silence kept me safe. She paused, studying my shock with something like sympathy, and it kept Adrian rich. Blood roared in my ears. "You, Marianne, do they know?" Marianne orchestrated it. Lily's smile was a blade. Better PR to have a tragic daughter than a whistleblower. She opened a cedar box, removing a stack of memory cards and a weathered journal. "He's cheating on you, Cassandra, but that's the least of his crimes. The winery finances are rotten, labor violations, tax fraud, fake sustainability certificates. Adrian promised to sign me into a care facility if I spoke." The room tilted. The vineyard beyond the window suddenly looked carnivorous. "Why trust me?" I croaked. "Because you still look people in the eyes," she answered, "and because you're already drowning in their lies. Let's swim the other way together." That night we outlined an impossible plan by lantern light. Step 1, retrieve digital ledgers hidden in Philip's locked study. Step 2, trace Adrian's offshore calls, cross-reference with shipment dates. Step 3, deliver everything to a journalist Lily had quietly befriended during her mute years. "Timing is key," Lily warned. Tapping the calendar, "They dock in Dubrovnik in 6 days. If we expose them mid-voyage, they can't shred files from 12 time zones away." I stared at the map of red pins and hand-drawn arrows, adrenaline fizzing like fermenting grape must. The risks were lunatic lawsuits, family wrath, a marriage imploding in public view. Yet under the danger pulsed liberation. For the first time in years, I felt the vineyard soil beneath my fingernails and knew it could grow something honest. I reached across the table, covering Lily's hand. "Let's bottle the storm." She squeezed back, eyes shining. Outside, wind rattled the shutters like corks easing from aged glass, warning or invitation. Impossible to say. But the vintage of my old life had spoiled. Time to pour a new one. I haven't slept since Lily's revelation. Fear should drain you. Instead, it's turned my pulse into a metronome that ticks out plans. 3 dawns later, we stand in the manor's east corridor. Butter-soft carpet muffling our heartbeat. The housekeeper's day off. The vineyard hands already in distant rows, perfect silence for burglary in your own home. Philip's study guards its secrets behind a hulking oak door and a brass Yale lock. Lily slips a tension wrench from her sketch pouch. Apparently charcoal wasn't the only tool she mastered in hiding. 2 clicks, 1 slow exhale, and the handle yields. The room smells of leather, cigar ash, and generational arrogance. Trophies glare from walnut shelves. Gold Reserve 2015, Best Cabernet 2018. Lily heads straight for the largest plaque, lifts it off its nail, and reveals a biometric keypad sunk into the wall. Father thought vintage awards were bulletproof decor. She mutters, "Thumbprint won't work." But the override code is his poker tell birth year of every grandchild he never met. She taps 4 digits. A panel slides back, exposing a gunmetal safe no bigger than a bread box. We search drawers for a key. Find none. My gaze lands on a pewter corkscrew shaped like a stag. An idea sparks. I wedge the spiral into the safe's keyhole. Lily applies a jeweler's hammer until the shear pin snaps. Primitive, but the door swings open. Inside 2 ledgers, a flash drive, and a slim manila folder labeled cerulean. We pore over the ledgers on Philip's mahogany desk. Columns of shipping dates pair with inflated yield numbers. According to these books, last year's harvest produced 30% more grapes than actually grew. The surplus was donated to a shell charity in Montenegro, which conveniently resells excess wine at quadruple price-perfect laundering loop. The flash drive is worse drone footage of undocumented workers spraying banned pesticides at night, their faces hidden under torn scarves. A single leak of this would bankrupt the winery and invite criminal charges. But the folder freezes my blood. Inside is an insurance policy taken out 2 months ago on me, $5 million. Beneficiary Adrian Moore, tucked behind it, a handwritten timeline. May 17th, finalize will change. June 2, Cabernet Cave renovation check trapdoor. June 8, discuss accident cover with Aon broker. I swallow hard, throat dry as cork. He planned to kill me, I whisper. Lily's jaw tightens. Now you understand the clock. Our contact, Mara Kovac, answers on the second WhatsApp ring. She's an investigative reporter based in Split, Croatia, currently covering counterfeit wine in the Adriatic trade routes. Your evidence lands bigger than counterfeit, I say, voice shaking. Slavery, fraud, attempted murder, we can hand it to you in person. She pauses only long enough to type, I'll be in Dubrovnik Harbor when the Elysian Dawn docks Sunday. Bring everything. But once the story breaks, anyone involved gets desperate. Before leaving, we stage our disappearances. I text Adrian a selfie of me sipping coffee on the porch, time-stamped, to cement the illusion I'm home. Lily sets her wheelchair in the sunroom, blanket draped as if she's napping. Security cameras loop footage from yesterday. We lock the manor and hike down the service road to an Uber no staff to question suitcases. As the car winds past rows of ripening grapes, I realize I'm not sad. The vineyard's beauty was always grafted onto deceit. I'm done pruning rot. At SFO, Lily buys 2 throwaway phones, hands me one. New number. New rules speak only when lines feel clean. Her composure is bulletproof. But when we clear security, she grips my arm. You okay? I should be terrified. I answer. Mostly I feel alive. Over Greenland. Cabin lights dim. I open the insurance folder again, tracing Adrian's handwriting. Each letter looks confident, impatient like a man scribbling grocery lists, not plotting a widow-making. I remind myself his arrogance is our lever. Lily sleeps, head on the tray table. Without the fragile act, she's formidable, yet suddenly younger years lost to silence returning to her cheeks. I draft a letter to my younger self on a barf bag. Trust intuition. Vinegar doesn't turn back to wine, no matter how pretty the label. I tuck it away, a keepsake for the day after victory. The plane descends into Dubrovnik's dawn, terracotta roofs blazing under peach sky. We weave through customs, taxi along ancient walls, and check into a hostel overlooking the port nondescript, cash paid. From the balcony we spot the Elysian Dawn anchored offshore, its white hull glinting like polished ivory. According to the cruise schedule, passengers disembark after lunch for a city tour. That's our window. Mara texts a meet point Pier 3 blue fish shack. 14 sarot. She adds a shark emoji gallows humor. Perhaps. We have 4 hours. Lily transfers files onto 3 micro SD cards, tucking one in her boot heel, another in my bra strap, leaving the third taped beneath a cafe table 3 streets away. Redundancy is survival. I rehearse confrontation lines in the mirror, then tear them up. Truth isn't theater, it's a lit match. All I need to do is strike it. Lily snaps her laptop shut, ready to toast ruin. I think of Adrian's ring, Marianne's pearls, Philip's trophies. I picture the undocumented workers coughing in pesticide mist, the policy on my life, the press cameras that will soon taste more blood. Ready, I say. We shoulder backpacks, step into Croatian sunlight, and walk toward the harbor where an empire is about to crumble. One uncorked secret at a time. The Adriatic noon sun has teeth. Heat bounces off ancient limestone and turns Dubrovnik's harbor into a shimmering mirage. Lily and I reach Pier 3 at 13:55 Pax Light, hearts heavy. The blue fish shack is little more than a plywood kiosk painted cobalt. Nets dangle like tired lace. A one-eyed cat sleeps in the shade. No sign of Mara Kovac. I check my burner, no new texts. Sweat crawls down my spine. Two men in crisp polos step from a tender docked nearby. Corporate haircuts, mirrored sunglasses, earpieces. They sweep the pier with two thorough eyes. My lungs seize. Security detail. Lily murmurs. Her calm cracks for the first time. Private. Judging by the shoes, that's Adrian's style. He never trusts local muscle. We pivot toward the tourist trail, pretending to study a map. One guard speaks into his cuff and starts our way. Not good, I hiss. Lily keeps walking. Voice low, plan delta, blend, then split. We practice this on the flight, disappear in different directions, regroup at the south gate of the old city of Tailed. I duck into a flow of cruise passengers headed for the medieval walls. Camera flashes popping like popcorn. Lily vanishes behind a street musician. I can't risk glancing back. Cobblestones climb in steep ribbons. Vendors hawk gelato and Game of Thrones magnets. My pulse matches the drum of my sandals. At a fountain, I dare a look. The taller guard, now 10 meters behind. Pretending to admire postcards, his partner must be tracking Lily. I slide into a shaded alley barely shoulder width. Laundry flaps overhead. The air smells of figs and engine oil. Footsteps echo. He's followed. Halfway up the alley, a wooden door stands ajar. Instinct shoves me through it. Dim light. Incense. Stone arches the entry to a cloistered monastery. A nun in white habit blinks but says nothing as I nod a shaky greeting. Tourists whisper around medicinal herb gardens. My shadow follows me in. Smooth marble betrays his loafer's squeak. I duck beneath a low arch, emerge into the pharmacy museum, and weave between glass cabinets of 14th century tinctures. Reflections fracture in the cases. I can't see him. My breath fogs a dusty display. Suddenly a hand grips my elbow. I whirl, expecting mirrored lenses, meeting soft brown eyes instead. Mara, I gasp. She presses a finger to her lips, guides me behind a massive mortar. Your tail's busy with a prayer candle, she whispers. Her Croatian lilt curls each word. Lily texted me the risk code. We move now. Oh. We slip out a side gate into sunlight, merge with a tour group, then cut inland toward the South Gate rendezvous. Lily waits beneath a jacaranda tree, cheeks flushed, no guard in sight. She lifts her phone, a selfie with her hunter in the background. Disoriented by a maze of staircases, we allow a 2-second laugh, then focus. Mara leads us to a cramped apartment above a bakery. Ceiling fans whine, sugared dough perfumes the air, metal shutters slam, safe for the moment. You have the package, Mara asks. Lily hands over the ledger images on a microcard, plus the pesticide footage. I pass the physical documents. Mara scans a few pages, her face hardening. They'll torch the vineyard to keep this buried, she murmurs. Tonight I upload encrypted copies to 6 outlets, but we need a public trigger so no injunction can gag us. I picture the Elysian dawn, still at anchor, hosting a gala tonight. The cruise hosts a wine pairing show on deck after sunset. I say, Adrian will be center stage, bragging about his new sustainable vintage. Broadcast cameras everywhere. Mara's eyes gleam. Perfect theater. We outline the strike. Mara will leak summary findings to a major Balkan news channel timed for 20th. Meanwhile, Lily and I board the ship with tourist passes. Lily hacked off a booking forum. At 20:05 during Adrian's toast, we project one key video, workers spraying banned chemicals onto the ship's jumbo screen. Once the story goes live, those guards will pivot to containment. Mara warns, you'll need an exit. There's a tender that ferries late diners ashore. Lily notes, we hijack its return trip. I swallow. Simpler said than done, but every option bleeds risk now. At 17:00, my burner buzzes. An unknown local number, but I know the voice. Adrian. Cass, we need to talk. He sounds strained, almost pleading. Something's off. Mom and Dad are panicking. Where are you? I stare at the harbor's glitter through the shutter slats. Part of me still aches at that timbre, the honeymoon laugh hidden underneath, but the policy on my life eclipses nostalgia. I'm safe. I reply, you won't be. He exhales, anger flaring. This stunt won't end well for you. Come back and we'll fix it quietly. I'm done being quiet. I end the call, pop out the SIM, crush it under my heel. 1940. We queue with sunburned tourists boarding the Elysian dawn. No bag checks beyond a cursory glance. Lily's tablet and pocket projector rest in her satchel like coiled vipers. Deck lights sparkle against ink water. A string quartet warms up near a sculpture of Dionysus. I spot Adrian in a linen jacket, hair sculpted, glass of reserve cab swirling. My heart slams once, then steadies anger as excellent anesthesia. We position ourselves beside a potted palm opposite the stage screen. Lily readies the projector. I keep watch. The shorter guard stands by the bar, scanning the crowd. He hasn't seen us yet. 20:03. Adrian steps to the mic, voice velveted with PR polish. Tonight we unveil Moore Estate's Pure Terra line, proof that tradition and eco-innovation can dance. Cue polite claps. He lifts his glass for the ceremonial sip. Lily taps her tablet. The jumbo screen flickers, then spills grainy night vision of workers dousing vines in illegal pesticide. Sickly green mist. Coughing fits. Date stamp clear. Gasps ripple. Some guests think it's part of the show until subtitles appear. Moore Estate's true harvest. Adrian's face drains. Turn that off, he roars. Security scrambles. The crowd erupts into shock. Phones raised. Streaming live. Perfect. We bolt for the starboard stairs. The shorter guard notices, shouts, feet thunder behind. Lily tosses the projector into a champagne bucket decoy and darts down a crew corridor. I follow. Alarms now blare. Someone triggered a security lockdown. Hatches seal ahead. We veer into a galley. Dodge clattering pans. Burst onto a maintenance deck where the tender rocks on its winch. The crane operator yells in Croatian. Lily flashes a forged clearance badge and mimics urgency. He shrugs. Starts lowering the boat. The guards burst through the galley door. Go. I shove Lily into the tender. Jump after. Slash the mooring line with a prep knife swiped from the galley. The small engine sputters awake as bullets Bullets whine into the railing above. Salt spray blinds me. We skid across black water under a rising orange moon, leaving the floating palace and Adrian's empire howling in chaos. We beach the tender on a rocky inlet west of the city walls. Legs shaking. We climb to a cliff road where Mara's rented van waits. Headlights off. She grins, holding up her phone. Broadcast hit every major Balkan network. International wires picking it up. By morning, Interpol will be sniffing. Lily sinks into the seat, laughter loosening from her chest, half triumph, half shock. I exhale a breath I've held since Napa and watch the Elysian dawn glow like a wounded lantern in the bay. Adrian's voice still rings in my ears, but now it's drowned by a sweeter sound, the crash of waves against unbroken rock, loud, honest, relentless. At 0610, my shattered burner chirps unknown number, U.S. country code. I expect Adrian's rage. Instead I hear Marianne, voice brittle as hoarfrost. Cassandra, you've humiliated us enough. Meet me at Fort Lavriginac, alone. You want everything to end clean? Come. The call ends before I answer. Lily frowns. Classic trap. Maybe, but she won't quit. Better we script the final act. Mara protests. Lily outvotes her. We keep 2 microcards, one in Lily's boot, one in my pocket, and leave the originals with Mara. Evidence insurance. Twice over. Fort Lovrianac crowns a sea-washed cliff. Walls 3 meters thick. Tourists won't arrive for hours. We reach the gate at 07 Ashro. I send Lily to circle wide and cover exits with her camera, then climb the worn steps into a courtyard that smells of brine and gunpowder. Marianne waits under an arch. Sunglasses hiding last night's sleep, silk scarf snapping in early wind. A single bodyguard lingers at a respectful distance. No sign of Adrian likely detained on the ship. She removes the glasses, her eyes are red, but not from tears, more like fury gone thin. You turn my family into tabloid fodder. She begins, quiet but lethal. End the leak. I'll wire you 10 million and disappear. Reject. And I burn you in court for defamation. Amazing how quickly ruin finds resources. I draw out the insurance policy Adrian bought on my life and let it flutter to the stones. That threat died with his signature. I step closer. What do you want to protect? Marianne. The business. Your name, Adrian. She winces at her son's name. Philip's been arrested in Italy. Interpol froze our accounts. I have nothing left except reputation. Help me salvage it. I lay out my terms: full confession to labor violations, environmental crimes, and fraudulent bookkeeping. Lily named controlling shareholder of whatever remains. Public apology to every worker harmed. Marianne's jaw sets. But behind it I see concession she knows leverage when she hears it. And Adrian, she asks. He faces his own music. You taught him the tune. Her lips press thin. Then she nods once queen sacrificing a king. She motions to the guard, who produces a slim folder notarized documents transferring 60% estate ownership to Lily, conditional on my silence about the murder policy. I don't take it. No secret bargains. Lily speaks. I speak. Press cameras rolling. I point at my phone streaming live to Mara's off-site drive. Marianne pales. The digital age shows no mercy. Lily steps from the shadowed stairs, phone held high. Hello, mother. Her voice echoes off the stone. Strong as surf. Marianne's composure crumbles. You can walk. Speak. Why? Because vulnerability was safer than living under your control. She gestures to my camera. Now the world knows. I end the stream. File auto uploads engaged. No going back. Marianne's shoulders sag. Then I sign whatever you want, but grant me one request: protect the vineyard workers. They don't deserve our fallout. The plea surprises me. Even serpents guard their eggs, I suppose. We already planned a restitution fund. I say, your cooperation will grow it. She extends the folder again. I accept this time. Thumb through. Everything we demanded. Inked and witnessed. No tricks. Lily signs. Hands trembling not from fear but release. By noon we're in a notary office near the harbor. Papers stamped, recordings archived, transfers initiated. A UN labor rep pulled in by Mara's network oversees the worker compensation plan. The rep's handshake seals the Moore Empire's metamorphosis from private fiefdom to public trust. News outlets loop footage of Adrian being escorted down the Elysian Dawn's gangway in cuffs. Philip is shown boarding an Italian police boat. Social feeds erupt, had poisoned vintage trends worldwide. Investors dump more shares simultaneously. Donations to a new fund for exploited farm workers skyrocket. Lily watches the feeds in stunned silence. I rest a hand on her shoulder. Not bad for two women who needed supervision. She laughs full, bright, unbroken. 3 weeks later, we return to Napa Valley. TV vans box the estate road, but security now ours keeps them back. The vineyard looks different. Same rolling green, but the air is lighter, as though the ground exhaled. We meet with seasonal crews, many of whom hid from immigration raids. Translators convey Lily's commitment: fair wages, medical coverage, safety gear. When the translator falters, Lily switches to accented Spanish she'd learned in secrecy. Faces soften, some clap. Respect blooms faster than vines. That night, under lanterns strung across the crush pad, Lily and I sign relaunch labels: Phoenix Grove, First Honest Harvest. My role: creative director on my own terms. No hyphenated name. Equity tied to impact metrics, not marriage. One envelope waits on my new drafting desk, a jailhouse note from Adrian. I read only the first line. I'm sorry. I seal it back, toss it into the fireplace. Forgiveness is personal, forgetting is optional. Marianne writes weekly from a modest condo she's renting in Santa Barbara. She volunteers at a legal aid clinic for migrant workers. Atonement image repair, maybe both. People, like wine, can evolve or sour, time will judge. Harvest comes early. Workers laugh between rows. Safety monitors log every spray. I help design labels printed on recycled fiber. Profits pledge to replant fire-scarred hillsides. On launch day, we host a tasting open to the public. Free. Journalists sip cautiously, trying to decide if redemption has flavor. Lily raises a glass of our crisp Sauvignon and addresses the crowd. This vineyard once thrived on silence. Today it blossoms on truth. Cameras flash. I lift my own glass, catch her eye, and echo. To truth uncorked, unfiltered, unforgettable. We drink. The wine is bright, startling, alive exactly like the life now ahead of us. A year later, Phoenix Grove bottles win gold for ethical innovation. Worker turnover drops to near zero. Mara's documentary, Belle Without a Ring, wins a European Press Award. Profits fund scholarships for children of migrant pickers. I still keep the barf bag note from the flight reminder that intuition is vintage you never discard. Some nights I walk the rows alone, crickets loud, stars spilled thick, and think about the sentence that changed everything. We need to talk before he comes back. 7 soft words, One shattered facade, infinite second chances. I breathe in the scent of honest soil, tilt my head to the moon, and know this vintage, this life will never sour again.